Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in today's video, sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms, we're going to talk about BQ's performance in the open field. Is he good? Yes. In the preliminary test results, he is looking very good. And what do I mean by preliminary test results? Here's my theory on testing commanders, and this has been the case for the literal years that I have been doing this, live streaming when a commander drops. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. We were live with over 1,500 concurrent viewers yesterday, and also the follow-up videos, which is that when a new commander releases, I want to test them either with no gear or equal gear. And I like to start with no gear because, sure, it's not nearly perfect. The gear kind of can skew the results in meaningful ways, but I want to figure out what the right combinations even are to then gear up and get a closer look at. So this represents preliminary testing, where we did some duels and a little bit of skirmishing to try to figure out what is the best BQ combo potentially. And I'll have a follow-up video with more results once I can do a proper apples-to-apples gear test, because if you don't have the exact same gear, a part of what you're testing is ultimately the gear more than it is the commanders potentially. Depends on how different the gear and the armaments and inscriptions are. And there's a lot of variation in those these days. So let's go over some of these results. Big shout out and thank you to Bara for doing this testing with me. There's a couple combinations we wanted to figure out, but BQ primary, Liu Che secondary, I would have hypothesized to be the best combo because it's the two best Smite commanders. Smack them together and, like, of course they're going to do well, and that is the case. And at the end of the live stream we had yesterday, spoiler alert, the vote was that this is now the best combination in the game. I'll have a video about that later, but let's get a look here. BQ Liu Che, 27,000 Sev wounds for me to 25,000 for Bara. I use Liu Che William. Now, William should theoretically be better at dueling, by the way. And I started this fight winning, by the way, but then BQ took over. It was actually kind of crazy. Like, I would start this fight with a bang and then just lose. And the reason, by the way, is the BQ expertise skill. So this thing makes it so that when you get to 50% of units remaining, you do 60% more damage and take 30% less damage for 6 seconds. When you get to 15% of units remaining, you deal 100% more damage and take 50% less damage for the next 6 seconds. This should make BQ win pretty much any duel he goes into. Now, that's not the case, which is significant, but if he can win in the duels and he's an AoE commander, that is a very, very good sign. All right, so of course we run these tests more than one time because honestly, I'd like to run each test at least like 10 times to be able to prove anything kind of conclusively. But we ran it twice. We got a pretty consistent result here, about 37,000 to 24,000 again. Then we ran it against some archers, 37 to 27. It's actually kind of insane. This is infantry beating archers. Now, granted, these archers are old, and, you know, it is, however, double AoE versus double AoE. Kind of nuts. We used the Huo with Arthur, and we did make sure to load up the Arthur with the 30 seconds of wait time, or rather the Huo, to give him the, the third skill, so he gets an extra kick at the start of the fight. All right, we made sure that that was active. And Huo was losing. Huo Arthur lost to BQ Liu Che. Okay, 43,000 to 29,000. Guys, this is insane. Now remember, this is no gear test, no armaments, okay? So putting gear on, putting armaments on obviously can skew things, especially because cavalry have all that health gear, which is like just better than what other troop types can get, in my opinion. But very, very powerful showing. We ran the archers a second time, and the result's pretty consistent, 37,400 to 29,500 in favor of BQ. And then we ran the Huo again, and it lost 40,000 to 27,000. So this is a pretty consistent result here, that the BQ with Liu Che is amazing. And that's what we would have expected going into this, and we left this testing thinking that if you're going to make one infantry march in the game, this is it. This is the one infantry march you make. It's the best one. Now, with that said, we tried some other combos, and they were surprising. We used BQ with Philip. It did not do as well. It ended up losing to Liu Che William, 29,000 to 33,600. It ended up beating the archers. So the archers lost 40,000 to 31,000. This is honestly like a similar result to BQ Liu Che against the archers. And we lost to the cavalry. Huo Arthur beats BQ Philip. Okay, so I mean, it's definitely not as good as BQ Liu Che to run it as BQ Philip. Lesson learned, but what if you make the Philip the primary? That is something we tested. And so here I am with Philip primary, BQ secondary, and we beat BQ Liu Che. Let's just take a moment to appreciate this for a second. It's just one test result. It's no gear. But we just finished saying BQ Liu Che is probably the best march in the game. In fact, I would argue it is. And Philip BQ beat it. Hello? Hello? I mean, that seems significant to me. We ran it again, and this time Philip BQ lost. So sample size of 2 is too small of a sample size. It could be that some amount of randomness led to this outcome where if, the BQ and Liu Che have their rolls for luck go before the Philip BQ ones, like you get a better result. Like it could just be instant proc damage snowballs, right? The combo damage from Liu Che and smite damage snowballs into a victory, all right? But the fact that you could put Philip and BQ together with a straight face is certainly an interesting idea. And when you start to realize why it is that this works, it's actually way more interesting. So the thing about BQ is that he's got this weird malice effect. It's a lot of words to basically say he's going to gain these stacks of malice, and under certain conditions, he'll spend those stacks to do smite damage. And one of the conditions under which you gain these malice stacks is by using an active skill. Philip gives you a 60% chance, I mean, not exactly, it's a 40% chance and then a 20% chance to use your active skills over again. So you're getting extra activations of active skills, which works really well for this malice effect, stacking up and then doing extra smite damage. It was definitely surprising. Okay. Now it makes sense that Philip primary would do better than BQ primary. And the reason is that although Philip's talents are more oriented towards skill damage mitigation, which BQ LC isn't doing that, you do get really nice rage generation from Philip, and the smite talents on BQ are somewhat wasted in pretty much any situation where you only have one smite commander, not two. Okay, so Philip BQ, surprisingly good. We're not done though, because from here, we tested Philip BQ against the archers, and it did not do as well against the archers as the other pairings did. 33-4 to 36-5. So still winning, but not by as much. We also started to do some testing with Wallace, okay? And the reason we wanted to test BQ Wallace is to see, hey, maybe there's some other ways you can pair up your infantry, like 3x infantry, where you might want to run this pairing. The situation in which you'd want to do that would be if you want to run BQ Wallace, Liu Che Alex, and Ragnar Skippy. Those are 3 infantry marches that everyone would look at and go, yeah, I mean, that seems pretty good in the open field, right? Well, let's find out about this. So BQ Wallace wins against Liu Che Wallace, so that's a strong showing already. That is in part because of the expertise, though. I cannot overstate how powerful it is to just basically pause the damage you're taking in for a very meaningful amount for 6 seconds and then 6 seconds again. 12 seconds of a duel that lasted how long? I guess you could look up here and see, 12 seconds in a duel that's a minute long. That's a pretty big deal. We'll have more about that very important conclusion in just a minute. Here we've got the BQ Wallace against the Zhuge Herman, and this did better. And we would kind of expect Wallace to do better in duels. Like, he's single target damage. Liu Che is AoE. He's just busted. So he just He's just so good. But this is a good result here, okay? And then we brought out the Huo Arthur against the BQ Wallace, and BQ Wallace lost. Actually kind of surprising. So not as good in this situation compared to the Liu Che, the BQ Liu Che. Now, this is a sample size of 1. Sample size of 1 is deeply inadequate. So I don't want to draw any crazy conclusions here. I don't want to espouse or state that this is conclusive. But what is interesting is that this is a Wallace primary with BQ. Chat was suggesting, Chisgule, you have to run the Wallace as the primary. It'll do better. And so we're going to take a look at the skills in a minute, try to figure out why that would be the case. But Wallace BQ versus BQ Liu Che, and we won. Now, you'd kind of expect that, right? Like William Wallace does single target damage. So that should beat out Liu Che, who does AoE. So in a real fight, this would probably look better. But if we just get a closer look, we're like, hey, wait a minute. Like, why would Wallace primary potentially be better? So we do our smite damage here to the enemy. Okay. We've got this ability here. When this commander's troop deals smite damage with a damage factor greater than 1,000, there's an 80% chance that that damage will be increased by 40%. So if you make the Wallace the primary, you're making it so that this smite damage is enhanced as opposed to what? The BQ? He's down here. I need to favorite him. Yoink. So what's his smite damage? It's still 2,400 with a chance to take extra damage. So I don't know if I'm buying into like Wallace primary is better. I'm not sure I see a reason why that would be the case, actually. Talents are the same. I don't know that I'm buying it. I bought into it to test once on stream, but now that I'm looking at it, I'm kind of wondering what would make that true? Is there something else in this kit? Maybe related to the malice? Maybe? So if your malice stacks are higher than the percent units remaining of the enemy, you spend malice, do damage factor, do a bonus to sev wounds inflicted. Part of the reason why perhaps these trades are looking so interesting. And get a 20% bonus to rage recovery speed. This is why the Philip pairing is so interesting. Because it's not just like, oh, I'm doing smite damage, but I'm doing smite damage and inflicting more sev wounds and also getting a bonus to rage recovery. Yeah, you do want to stack the malice really quickly. But with a double smite pairing, you are benefiting more from this over here, okay? Enhancing your smite damage for your march as you lose troops. That seems very powerful. I'm not seeing a reason for Wallace to be the primary versus the secondary, but you definitely let me know in the comments down below. But here's the thing, okay? All this testing is no gear. Now, that does let us compare apples to apples. We're not getting confused by the extent to which equipment and armament differences are throwing the results, which may or may not be happening. But I still feel really good about BQ as an investment. I think he's a slam dunk for infantry. I think BQ Liu Che is the best march in the game, actually. And his weakness is also his strength. So the thing that I noticed when we did some 5v5 skirmishes, and they were, they were interesting, but not enough time to run and say anything conclusive. But what I observed is that BQ took an incredible amount of chip damage. And as we look at his kit, it's like, right, he's got 10% health. He doesn't have any damage mitigation over here. He doesn't really have damage mitigation over here. He's a glass cannon. He is a glass cannon with the exception of these brief moments where he takes way less damage. So he is just extremely squishy. So although he also does huge amounts of AoE damage in the field, you are going to notice his health chunk down really, really, really quickly in open field battles, just incidental damage that he's taking from other players. And it makes sense that his kit is designed this way because as he loses troops, he's going to do more smite damage anyways, which is very powerful. So the kit is synergistic, but also this is no Huo that's going to sit on the field, and if you're hitting low health marches and you take the healing ability over here, you will live eternally and stay very topped off if you do that right. So I mention this because we've seen this pattern in the past of commanders that get very, very weak as they fight in the open field. They still make for great open field commanders, but I do wonder how well this skill is going to transition to the sort of back and forth reality of open field combat. And if the majority of his staying power is coming from this, which it is, that will be greatly diminished, I think, in your typical back and forth fighting. And I think that will be offset by the fact that he's doing some fat AoE damage. I mean, the semicircle, 5 targets is absolutely disgusting. There's just no denying it, okay? So if you're making the best infantry marches in the game at this moment in time in Rise of Kingdoms, I actually can show you. I think I have these presets available to get a peek at here. But the way that you're going to do this is if you run one infantry march, it's BQ Liu Che. I think it's uncontroversial that is just incredibly powerful. It's the 2 best infantry in the game. You pair them together. What are we talking about? So that's very strong, and that's your one infantry march. Use pincer. Okay, that's the formation you use. If you run 2 infantry marches, you're going to take that same infantry march and not change it, and you're just going to add in Ragnar Skippy, and you can run that wedge. And at this moment in time, that is the strongest 2 infantry pair you can run. And if you want to do 3 infantry, you can see I have it up on screen. You can run Wallace BQ, or flip the order and run it the other way. You run Liu Che with Alex, and you run Ragnar Skippy. And that is 3x infantry. If you want to do this as leadership, Ragnar Skippy, okay, BQ is going to be paired with Philip Primary, and you can do Liu Che Alex. And you're in a really good spot, right? You're just switching up who's over here. Or you could do, if you prefer, Liu Che and Wallace together. I prefer that, right? But the Alex is just obviously incredibly popular because some may argue it's better. And also, in fact, many will argue it's just better. But also, the advantage of the Alex is that he's like very obtainable. A lot of people didn't invest in Wallace, and have been proven, honestly, like justifiably that was a fine choice. It all depends on how many infantry you run. Then the weirdness gets into, well, what formation plan are you really investing in? But that's sort of topic for a separate video, in my opinion. All right, so we talk about that later. But I think that gives you a pretty good breakdown of if you run 1, 2, or 3 infantry marches, how does BQ fit into the picture? And if you're wondering, Cheesy, what talents did you run on this guy for the test? We ran a full smite build, but we did not go for to the bitter end. This is, in my opinion, more of like a rally garrison talent. We did not go for Pack-a-Punch because I feel like this just makes you very vulnerable. Again, I feel like this is like a rally garrison talent in the right context. Increasing your smite damage dealt, but taking more normal damage means you also are taking more smite damage, right? It also means you're taking more combo damage, right? So this is an asymmetrical ability in your favor only when you are doing big smite damage but not getting targeted by lots of stuff. It's honestly insane for like a multi-rally situation. But I'm getting kind of off topic here. So these are the BQ talents that we used. And by the way, it'll be really funny for you to go compare to the BQ guide that I put together before his release. I'll have a card in the end screen for that because I bet you my predictions were pretty close to everything I'm sharing here. Now, there is one other thing worth talking about, which is Canyon. And man, BQ is cooking in Canyon. I mean, I'm number 1 in GV77 right now, which is insane because like the players in this kingdom have like final boss level teams. Now, I'm losing to Hope and Wildline. It would actually be kind of interesting to go see how that went down, but I am like unsurprised. These guys have absolutely insane teams. But what I did is I've paired together BQ and Constantine. I didn't start by doing that, by the way. I did something else. I thought it would be better. And then chat was insistent that I try it. And I was like, oh, okay, we figured it out. BQ Constantine is the way to go. And I'm also using Ragnar Liu Che in my DPS top lane, which is just something that we're going to have to figure out. Like, I got to play around. I'm really locked into a very strange situation because I invested in attack equipment, the full infantry set. I mean, is it crazy that I would decide to invest in the full infantry set? I don't think so. But the weirdness of having done that is that I can't actually put infantry in the front row in Canyon without getting pretty wrecked because I don't have the defense to go and do that, especially with a combo like Ragnar Liu Che. So Let's see here how this goes. So now we turn on him. I'm vulnerable, it looks like, to this 4v1 attack approach. And that kind of makes sense. Big damage going in here. And this Guan is just getting an incredible amount of value. Oh my god. Yeah. The Shajar that he's got is just going to work way better in this 4v1. I might have to mess around with how I set this up and what I do with the archers here. So I could play around with his defense, still figuring it out. But, you know, these are like final boss teams here. So, and also they're my teammates in Holm Gang. For those of you that haven't seen, the Holm Gang is in the King of All Britain KVK format. I know I'm on a tangent here. But we're teamed up, which is pretty cool here. Can I show that? Yeah, there we go. And it's funny because we like can't gain rank because nobody wants to attack us. Anyways, I also put this in a Lost Canyon. I haven't looked since last night, but it was okay. I have literally pages and pages of zeros where I get a defensive victory with this lineup. It's actually insane. So yeah, no, it's working, chat. It's working. I guess I could hit number 2 here. We're climbing. We're climbing. It's kind of weird. This KVK GV77 is all over this leaderboard for the top Canyon teams. So BQ Constantine works because BQ on his expertise is very much diminishing the sort of velocity of the damage you're taking. It goes such a long way. I think I want to run this like this. The Ragnar will stay on top and the Arthur will swing down and buff the rest of the team. I messed that up last night, so I think this will fix it. Let's give this a shot here and see how that goes. I am matching, you know, my Trajan into his DPS, which is a little concerning, but the BQ over here should just be incredibly survivable. Oh my god, yeah, this is working exactly the way I thought it would. Having the Ragnar Liu Che just doing huge DPS into this group here is insane. And now my Arthur Phillip, that's Arthur Phillip, is buffing everything I've got down here, which is just massive, and it should lead to a snowball victory in my favor here. So, my middle is getting a little chewed up, though, actually. Ooh. Am I actually in a spot of trouble here? Who does he got paired with this Nevsky? It's actually kind of insane. His middle's getting really chewed up, though, too. Like, look at that, dude. Look at that. I guess that, I don't know if the Ragnar Liu Che was just putting tons of DPS into those marches or what, but this is actually going to come down to a bit of a showdown here. This is actually not so clear. I don't know. I think I'm going to win, but this is a little bit closer than I was expecting. He also has a BQ now, by the way, which, you know, I think it's incredibly powerful. That BQ is doing work. And somehow is that march out of my AoE? How is that possible? Let's see this AoE. Okay, yeah, he's getting hit. He's getting hit. This was way closer than I thought. BQ really changes the calculus. So he used BQ Constantine as well, which is actually kind of funny. Is it funny? No, it's just meta. Why would that be funny? It's just meta. At least as far as I can tell. I don't know. I guess it's too early on to just declare it's meta. But, you know, I mean this in like a respectful way, but I was beating his team by like a lot more. And then he put BQ in. So I think BQ really elevated that. The other thing I could try to do is to not match up my... it might be better to just not match up my Trajan into his DPS the way that I did. That could serve me much better. I don't know. He's one of the players that has a team that can really push rank, which is very cool. So yeah, this leaderboard is insane. And this KVK is insane. All these kingdoms got together and they're like, all right, either you get an easy K or we get an easy KVK. So we're taking an easy KVK. That's how I understand it to be anyways. So yeah, we are 3v1. It's our kingdom and our campmate versus the world. And that starts Thursday, first pass opening. I don't know if we're going to be fighting anybody. We'll see if they come to fight us. They might wait till Kingsland, TBD. Subscribe. You're not going to want to miss it. You get to see BQ in action. I maxed him. You'll see him in action in just 2 days. If they show up. I think they will, but maybe they won't. So where do we land with BQ? He's very good. I would call all of the results in this video, as I said at the start, preliminary because there were no gear tests. The goal of the no gear test was to figure out lots of different combinations and test different things and see what might work. Now that I've done that, I've got a few ideas for things I would do next. So be on the lookout for a follow-up video with more detailed BQ testing and guidance. If you want to see my original guide for BQ, where I made a bunch of predictions about how I might pair him or what you might do with him, I'll have that card over here. I think you'll find that to be very valuable. And if you want to watch the full live stream and see it in action, card will be over there. All right. And like I said, I'm always streaming new commander launches. And in fact, I've got like a formula basically for every time a new commander comes out. I just do a series of videos every single time. You don't want to miss those. Subscribe. And until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Take care, everybody.